Hello everyone, I'm Ben Mitchers, the alternate historian. Immigration is a big issue today in the world. The current Syrian refugee crisis is threatening to tear the European Union apart, while illegal immigration from Mexico is still a hot-button topic in the United States of America.
Speaking of my home country, immigration is always a touchy subject for many Americans because the United States is a country made up of immigrants. Many Americans can trace their ancestry to foreign-born people who came to America to flee persecution or find a better life for themselves and their families. Still, America has always had a strong anti-immigration undercurrent that continues to exert its influence in the political process.
When thinking about this, I, as an alternate historian, had to ask, what if there was no immigration to the United States of America?
Quick disclaimer, this video will be more of a hypothetical question than a plausible what-if, since even the 13 original colonies would not exist without immigration. Additionally, there were a lot of factors outside the United States after it was founded that spurred immigration to it, such as crop failures, social turbulence caused by the Industrial Revolution, and faster modes of travel, such as steam power. Thus, it's almost impossible to stop those developments without completely remaking recent human history. Nevertheless, I will hopefully lay out a plausible way to change history to severely decrease the number of immigrants coming to America after the country has become independent.
With that said, let's see what an immigrant-less America looks like.
First, we begin with the point of divergence. An early immigration law was the Naturalization Act of 1798, championed by the Federalist Party, one of the original American political parties. The Naturalization Act is considered one of the Alien Sedition Acts, a series of laws passed by the Federalist-controlled Congress and approved by President John Adams. It required a 14-year residency before an immigrant could become a citizen and allowed the government to deport anyone they found dangerous. Defenders of the Naturalization Act said it was necessary for national security, but modern historians believe it was passed to take away votes from the Federalist' more immigrant-friendly rival, the Democratic Republicans, the precursor to the modern Democratic Party. Thomas Jefferson's victory in the presidential election of 1800 led to the end of the Federalist government and the Naturalization Act. Perhaps in an alternate timeline, Jefferson is defeated by the Federalists, and a strong anti-immigration stance becomes the foundation of the early American government. This probably wouldn't curtail immigration completely, but it would be a start. Strong government opposition to foreign residents would be a blessing for anti-immigration groups that formed in our timeline, like the Know Nothings, a nativist political organization that opposed Catholic immigrants due to a conspiracy theory that claimed the Pope wanted to subjugate America, much like some modern Americans fear Muslim immigrants want to introduce Sharia law. Know-Nothings and similar organizations like the American Party and the Order of the Star-Spangled Banner were primarily made up of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. Without an influx of a culturally and religiously diverse immigrant population, people like the Know-Nothings could become the primary ethnic group of America. In fact, the idea of an American ethnicity could be even more distinct than it is today. In this timeline, Native Americans could mean descendants from the original 13 colonies, rather than an American Indian. Another factor that encouraged immigration that we need to consider is the availability of cheap land. The Homestead Act of 1862 provided free land, usually 160 acres, to any American willing to settle and farm it. Such a scheme had always been opposed by Southerners who feared it would attract immigrants, and to be fair, it did. So let's get rid of it. Perhaps the South never secedes in this timeline and thus doesn't miss out on an opportunity to oppose the Homestead Act. Or perhaps the Louisiana Purchase never happens. If we are going with an alternate America dominated by an anti-immigration Federalist Party, then there is no guarantee America would ever expand across the Mississippi River. In our timeline, many Federalists opposed the purchase, and a motion to deny the request to purchase the territory failed in the House of Representatives by only 2 votes. Thus, in this alternate timeline, there is no Louisiana Purchase, and thus no Homestead Act. Without cheap land to farm, immigrants would see less reasons to come to America.
Without immigration, however, this alternate America's economy would be small and sluggish. Lacking a large workforce, industrialization could be delayed and only centered in the northeastern states.
This alternate America might even be more dependent on the slave trade because someone needs to do the jobs that no one else wants. Thus, the act prohibiting importation of slaves of 1807 might never have been passed, and the slave trade could have continued for decades. While this might mean America would have an even larger African American population, I'm not convinced that my fictional United States would be better for blacks. Laws like the Naturalization Act of 1870, which extended citizenship to free blacks after the American Civil War, would probably never be passed by a United States dominated by a distinct American ethnicity that opposed any perceived threats to its existence. I'm not sure what life would be like for African Americans in this alternate America, but I doubt it would be anything good. And yet I think it's reasonable to assume that a few immigrants might find their way to America's shores for one reason or another, but I wouldn't bet on them finding a friendly welcome. Many would likely face strict segregation and perhaps even be victims of violence from the natives. Their children probably wouldn't have the option of birthright citizenship because I don't see this America passing something like the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. Can't have that, however, in a country that wants to keep people out. With all that said, I can think of a few individuals who wouldn't come to this America. Scientists like Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla would never come to call the United States their home, and the country would miss out on their impact to science. America would also miss out on entrepreneurs like steel magnate Andrew Carnegie or Sergey Brin, who founded Google, which owns the very platform I am communicating to you with right now. Which, let's not forget, was also co-founded by immigrants Stephen Ched and Javed Karim. In fact, studies show that immigrants are 40% more likely to be entrepreneurial than native-born Americans, and one can assume that without such an enterprising spirit present, the economy in this alternate America would be even weaker than I initially suggested. I could keep going, but it's difficult to speculate the further we get from the initial point of divergence, and I think you get my point. This hypothetical immigrant-less America would not be a country I think that many Americans would want to live in. It's not a country that could produce the industrial might to defeat the Axis powers, stand up to the Soviet Union, land on the moon, or champion human rights both at home and abroad. It's certainly not a country I could exist in, considering my set of foreign-born grandparents who left war-torn Europe for a chance at a better life across the Atlantic.
That said, I'm not going to pretend that the issues surrounding immigration aren't complicated, especially in the light of national security. Additionally, I can see why people believe that immigrants are stealing jobs from native-born Americans because they are likely to work for less.
People, however, have to remember the good things caused by immigration. It has allowed the United States to be both a culturally and economically dynamic superpower. In fact, I would like to end this video by quoting from President Abraham Lincoln's, America's first Republican president, platform for the 1864 presidential election, which was created when many were trying to tear the United States apart. It states, "Foreign immigration, which in the past has added so much to the wealth, resources, and increase of power to the nation, should be fostered and encouraged."
Well, that is all I got to say in this subject. If you like what I do, please comment, subscribe, share this video, or support me on Patreon. I'm Matt Mitrich, the Alternate Historian. Bye.